Hello, 222. One, two, 222. Yeah.
Hello.
Two, 222. 22. 22. 22. 22. Hello. Yeah. Yeah.
Test.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Test. Okay. With an hour thanks to Peter, we are back up and running. I think that I've broken the first rule of the training I had last week with regard testing microphones, and hopefully we won't have any more issues. So are we recording? Yeah, great. So we'll start again. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Pensions Committee and Board. I'm Councillor George Dunstall, Stroud Green Ward, and I'll be chairing this meeting. We'll start with introductions again, so if we can please ask committee members and officers to introduce themselves, starting with my left.
Cody Sprott, Principal Committee Coordinator.
Patrick Users, Principal Lawyer, Legal Advisor to the committee.
Hi, I'm Tammy Hymus. I'm the Vice Chair of Pensions and Councillor for St Anne's.
Matt White, I'm a member of the committee and councillor for Tottenham Central.
Councillor John Bevan, Northumberland Park.
Hi, I'm Karen, Councillor for Woodside.
Councillor Da Costa, member for Highgate Ward.
I'm Steve Turner, investment consultant from Mercer.
Ray Pattinson, employer representative.
Keith Brown, employer representative.
Ismail Owarish, employee representative.
John Rayson, independent advisor.
Tara Neves, Director of Finance.
Jamie Abbott, Pensions Manager.
Tim Mpofu, Head of Pensions and Treasury.
Great, and apologies again to our visitors in person and those online for the issues we've had. If I could just ask everyone to switch their mobiles off or onto silent to avoid distractions, and just make everybody aware that only those members of the public who have previously registered to speak are permitted to do so, and we welcome our registered speakers, and I'll come to you when the item is coming up. So moving on to item 1, filming at meetings. This filming is being live streamed via the council's website and will also be recorded and available to view by members of the press and public. Everyone present is allowed to film as long as it does not disrupt the meeting. Thank you. Moving on to item 2, apologies for absence or lateness or any substitutions. There are none. I've got apologies from Randy Plowright, and that'll be noted. Moving on to item 3, items of urgent business. Got any? No items of urgent business. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. There are none, but please do let us know if you become aware of anything during the meeting. Item 5 is deputations, petitions and questions. I'm pleased to welcome today a deputation from Haringey Unison, who wish to bring our attention to a matter regarding pension funds investments, which is within the remit of our committee. The spokesperson for this deputation is Lana Hasham. And if you'd like to come and sit at the table, Lana, in a moment, I'll ask you to press the button and you'll have 3 minutes to explain to the committee the purpose of your visit, and I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. After that, I'll ask the committee if they've got any questions for you, and I'll then be writing to you after the meeting with a formal written response. Is that all? Yeah. So I think when you're ready.
Last year, Yemeni nationals sued Lockheed Martin for aiding and abetting war crimes and extrajudicial killings by supplying weapons to the Saudi-led coalition. Boeing also supplies weaponry to Saudi Arabia that have been used for airstrikes in Yemen that repeatedly hit civilian targets. Elbit Systems is Israel's largest arms manufacturer and the main supplier of the weapons used against Palestinians in Gaza, where the Lancet has conservatively estimated 186,000 have been killed. The International Court of Justice stated in January that it was plausible Israel's acts in Gaza could amount to genocide. UN experts have said any arms exports to Israel that are used in Gaza are likely a violation of international law and must stop immediately. These companies produce weapons that are used to kill and commit war crimes and spread misery across the world, including in Palestine, Yemen, Sudan, and the Sahel. Through the same index funds, our pensions are being invested in companies listed by the United Nations as being active in Israel's illegal settlements in Palestine, including Caterpillar, Bank Hapoalim, Motorola, and Airbnb. Just last week, the International Court of Justice called the occupation in Palestine unlawful, as are the settlements in the occupied West Bank, and that Israel's laws were tantamount to the crime of apartheid. The court advised that nations must not render aid or assistance in maintaining Israel's presence in the occupied territories. Caterpillar produced bulldozers used by the Israeli military to demolish Palestinian homes, schools, and infrastructure to make way for settlers. Bank Hapoalim provides financial services to illegal settlements across Palestine. Motorola provides security systems for numerous occupation settlements. Airbnb has around 200 properties for rent in the settlements. All these companies and others we fund support Israel's occupation. Other councils have managed to divest. In 2021, the East Sussex Pension Fund divested from Elbit Systems, and just this week, Waltham Forest Council agreed to divest from all companies
30 seconds.
Complicit in the arms trade and in human rights abuses. Haringey made a commitment in 2016 to divest from fossil fuel companies, and the fund has steadily moved its holdings in such companies. If we can divest for the sake of the environment, we can divest for the sake of human life. At the Pensions Committee meeting in March, the chair of the committee, Councillor Mahbub, said this is something that we are planning to look into. We are looking to find ways to see if we can make the fund fit Haringey's values. We ask you now to urgently withdraw financial assistance from companies producing weapons used in war crimes around the world and stop using members' money to render aid and assistance in maintaining Israel's unlawful occupation of Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lana. I'm going to ask the committee members now if they have any questions for you to answer. Any members got any questions on the deputation?
Can I ask if I mean, I think we've had these kind of discussions, this meeting before. I think everybody around this table is totally in favour of what you're arguing. I don't think nobody is against it. The problem is always the practical issue of how can you get it done. So my question is, the way we can get it done is if we have some kind of an investable universe in which we can buy instead of what we have. So are you working with banks and index companies to create an index which we could then buy? In the same way, you mentioned the green energy produce low carbon indices. We could therefore implement a strategy using those low carbon indices. Many years ago, South Africa, the anti-apartheid movement created a South Africa free index so that you could invest without supporting South Africa. What we need is an equivalent for dealing with arms, and then I don't think you'd have any problem getting that action taken. But until there is an instrument, we can't do much about it.
But you're the Pensions Committee, be pushing that back on you. If you are all in support of divesting, surely that is something that you guys should be looking into. Let me just refer to Waltham Forest Pension Committee, their statement after saying that they will divest. They have said they've been investigating how to do this and been in discussion with their fund managers, the London Collective Investment Vehicle, CIV, who manages pooled pension funds on behalf of all London boroughs, and have also taken legal advice to help them assess their options. So why is that not something that Haringey Council can start looking into? And actually, Councillor Mahbub at the last meeting said that they will be investigating the investments, and that they wish for it to align with Haringey Council's values. Our values are about courageousness and caring. There are children getting decimated. We are seeing it all over our screens. You supported South Africa in 1984 in their boycott, divestment and sanctions. Why are we waiting? This was raised in July, in fact. It was raised in July. It's minuted from last year. We are 1 year on and 10 months into a genocide, a plausible genocide. Why are we twiddling our thumbs? Where is the courage? Where is the courage and where is the caring?
Well, see, that's not the point. We know all that. We're 100% behind you. But where is the vehicle we can buy? Where is the vehicle we can invest to? It does not exist. Until it exists, we can't do it. We're invested on a passive basis. Therefore, we just buy an index. If Waltham Forest maybe have individual investment managers of which they can negotiate a contract.
I think
that involves millions of pounds a year to do that. We need an investable vehicle, then we can do it.
Can I just
Thank you.
Is money more important than human?
Sorry. Can I just? We have a response to some of those queries coming on. I think we've had that question. Are there any further questions for the deputation? Councillor Hymas.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Really important that you're bringing this to our attention. As you know, we're currently working on a responsible investment policy, and part of that will be understanding the views and beliefs of the committee. And I guess I wanted to ask, are there any particular beliefs that you think that as a committee we should be considering, as well as arms companies, but beyond that, are there any other areas that strike you as the union representing staff members that would be of particular importance?
I outlined here the companies that are investing in Israel's illegal settlements, so Caterpillar, Bank Hapoalim, Motorola and Airbnb. So those companies alongside the weapons manufacturers. I don't know if there's anything else that we wanted to put forward.
Thank you very much. Any further and final questions?
Can I just state that there was a petition signed by residents. You had 1,700, 1,800 residents, local residents, that supported the ceasefire and secondly, the divestment of pension funds. Now, your residents are supporting this. You are having protests outside each of your meetings, your full council meetings, and up to this point, it has been ignored. and we're hearing that you're going to look into the investments, then you're putting the onus back on us. Why can't we do something similar to what Waltham Forest have said that they would do, that they would seek legal advice? Why is the onus being put on us? We don't have the funds to look into those things.
Thank you. Noted. I have an initial response for you as well, and obviously there'll be a written response formally coming to you afterwards as well. So just firstly to thank you very much for taking the time to come and present your deputation to us this evening, and again for bearing with us during those technical issues. We appreciate your engagement and acknowledge the important issues and concerns that you've raised regarding the pension funds investments. The Pensions Committee and Board has an obligation to manage the Haringey Local Pension Fund scheme to ensure stable investment returns to pay member pensions over the long term. All committee members share this responsibility, and I assure you we all take this very seriously. In fulfilling this responsibility, we're required to comply with UK law, and we rely on our officers and advisors to help us to do this. Because it is a legal requirement for the pension fund to be invested in a diverse range of investments, the pension fund's policy for several years has been to invest in equity markets using passively managed pooled funds. This approach reduces our investment costs and provides appropriate diversification to protect member pensions. This approach means that whilst the fund does not directly own shares in any individual companies, including the ones you have mentioned, it may have some exposure to these companies due to index rules as set by the respective index providers. I've asked officers for the most up-to-date information on this exposure, and once I receive it, I will ensure it's included in a formal response to you after this meeting. In addition to our fiduciary duties, we're committed to ensuring that our fund invests responsibly and sustainably. We require all our appointed investment managers to be signatories of the United Nations Principles of Responsible Investment. Later this evening, we will discuss a work plan for the development of the fund's responsible investment policy, and through this policy we aim to establish a framework for addressing social, environmental and governance issues across all our investments. Alongside this, we also plan to develop a governance framework for making sure our appointed investment managers are accountable based on a set of criteria and in line with the fund's objectives. We understand that the pension fund operates in a complex regulatory environment, and assessing what is possible and in the best interests of our members will take time and may present significant challenges for us to navigate. You're very welcome, and we invite you to stay and observe this discussion. Thank you once again for your active engagement with us. At this point in time, yeah, that's where we're at, and there'll be a formal response as well. Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, moving on to item 6 is a record of any training undertaken since the last meeting. Councillor Beck.
I will send my record into the officers later this week.
I've also undertaken chairs training prior to this. Moving on to item 7. Is the minutes from the previous meeting, which have been circulated to members. Does anyone have any comments regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Can we agree the minutes?
I do.
Sorry, Keith.
Because it was during the anti-Israel deputation. What I said was not reported accurately in the minutes. I suggested to them that they needed an index, and that their goal was to create an index, and then we could invest in it, and that's not been reflected in the minutes at all. And I think it's important. That is the key for us doing anything, is to have an index we can use. So I would like that recorded, if you don't mind.
Is that noted? Otherwise agreed. Moving on to item 8, pension fund external audit plan for the year to 31st of March 2024. So this report presents the draft audit plan prepared by the pension fund's external auditors, KPMG, for the audit of the pension fund's annual accounts. This report is for the committee members to comment and note. I'll hand over to Tim Mpofu, Head of Pensions and Treasury, who will introduce this, and then we'll have some questions after that.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So yeah, as the Chair has introduced, this is agenda item 8, which is introducing the pension funds audit, external audit plan for the year to the 31st of March 2024. So this evening, we're joined by our representatives from KPMG, who will be giving you a presentation on the appendix. So shortly, I will invite them to introduce themselves and then take us through the actual audit plan itself. But before I do so, just a few things from members to note. The first one is that there is a requirement on the council each year to produce a statement of accounts. That's for the council's accounts. And as part of that, there is also the pension fund accounts, which make up that account. So as such, we do publish our sort of annual accounts at the same time as the council. And when the audit is being delivered in terms of the audit opinion, it's done at the same time as well. However, there is an additional responsibility on the committee to, which is a statutory responsibility, to publish a pension fund annual report. So we will be bringing the annual report to you for September for your consideration and approval. And then we'll be looking to upload that onto the council's website, the pension fund's website, before the deadline of 1st of December. Just to note to members that it's unlikely that the audit will be completed by then. So the version that we do upload is likely to be a draft version, but we'll bring the final version to you once you've obviously heard from the auditors as well in terms of their plan. The other thing I wanted to bring to members' attention, I know we've had a lot of discussions around this in terms of the delays associated with the audit. We have a new set of auditors, so they are different from BDO. So they will be setting out their approach. Their approach might be different to what BDO approach is, but they'll be sort of mentioning some of the work that they'll be taking. And given that this is their first year, there's likely to be more greater kind of scrutiny on the accounts, which I think members will obviously welcome. And myself and the team will be working quite closely with them to just make sure that we do that as quickly and swiftly as possible. So, Chair, if that's okay, that's all I want to say in terms of opening remarks, but happy to welcome Mehu and Mohammed to present to the committee.
Thank you. Do you want to come up? Thank you.
Good evening, members. I'm Mehul Agarwal, Senior Manager at KPMG and Lead Engagement Manager on the audit. And joining me today in the meeting is my colleague and in charge on the audit, Mohammed. For your review and approval, as Tim and Chair has mentioned, the draft plan is in the appendix to the agenda item 8. The plan remains draft as we still await clarity from NAO and central government over the prior year accounts, which are still unaudited. In the audit plan, we have provided an overview of audit materiality, significant risks, other audit risks identified as part of our risk assessment and planning, our declaration of independence on the audit, mandatory communications between auditors and management, details of key members in the audit team, fees, audit timetable, and changes noted in auditing and accounting standards over the period. I want to further highlight that as per the auditing standards, we are required to reassess the risk in light of any new evidences obtained as part of audit response. In case of any changes in our draft report, we will update the members in the upcoming meeting. We have assessed a significant risk over the management override of control, and this is required to be a significant risk because the ISA 315 has a mandatory requirement to consider it as a significant risk. As part of this, we are going to audit the journal entries. Apart from it, we have also assessed the risk over the valuation of level 1, level 2, and level 3 assets. We will perform our normal audit procedures as mentioned in the report to check if the valuation of these assets remains appropriate. We have assessed the risk over the contributions and benefit payments as well. This is more from the point of view that this remains the first year audit, But yes, we will reassess it again at year end once we have obtained the evidences. If there is any question or any clarification that you require from the draft audit plan, we are happy to look into those.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions? Councillor Curran?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am a little bit confused as to how you've categorized things into different risks. And could you maybe just give us a sort of a, I know you've summarized here, but it's still quite confusing the way you've put things into different risk categories and why you've considered certain things as very high risk, which maybe I'm not entirely convinced that's the case.
Its existence and accuracy of those assets, and as a result, it remains as a risk for us, although not as a significant risk, but a risk for us. Apart from it, we look into the valuations of those assets. We have not again assessed them as a significant. This is our first year of audit. We want to look into it in a lot more detail. And given that there are no prior year accounts that are audited as of now that are available to us for evidence purpose, so we have decided to assess them as a risk as well. Not as a significant risk, but as an area that we want to look into when we audit.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Councillor Hymas?
Yeah, my question was on the risk that you've identified around management override of controls. You mentioned that you identified that the pension fund does not have the enforced segregation of duty controls over the posting of journals. I wonder if you could just explain a little bit more about what that means in kind of practical terms, and also whether that's something that you might recommend having in the future for the fund.
Thank you. I think what we wanted to refer here is a segregation of duty from the perspective of preparer and a reviewer of the journal. So usually when the post-close journals or any high-risk journals are passed in the accounts, or even the normal routine journals are passed, we would want to see that there's a segregation, separate members of the team, separate officers of the team, looking from the perspective of preparing the journal and reviewing the journal. So what we have highlighted here is that we usually would like to see that control in place, which gives us some confidence over the journal posting. And of course, it helps us assess the overall balance, overall journals. Supposedly, if there are any journals that are passed into the system that that is not in line with the event that has occurred or the transaction that has occurred. So that is why we have highlighted it. The practice that can be implemented, or the control that can be implemented, is just to have all the journals being prepared and reviewed separately by different team members, and they have those roles and responsibilities within the team.
Yeah, so maybe just to clarify a bit, so journals is the way that we post the financial information into the accounting system. So what the auditors will be looking for is whether they're separate people basically doing that activity. So we do have a process in place, which we'll be sharing with them. I'm sure based on the feedback we've had now, they might have some suggestion on how we can make that more robust. But this is not to identify that there is an issue, but they have to check this because that's the highest risk. If anything could go wrong, for example, if I'm posting the journal and also creating it, I could put wrong numbers. So they're testing to see that that practice is not there, and they'll be providing that in their feedback to us.
And then just one more question was, obviously, we haven't had our financial accounts audited for the 2 previous years. If you do pick up a kind of significant financial misstatement that might also relate to previous years, would you be liaising with BDO, or would you be, what would be the process following that?
Our current response would be that we are waiting still for NAO and government to confirm what needs to be done from the new auditor on those accounts. So before that consultation is out, it would be very difficult for me to state how this would be taken. Maybe it could be a disclaimer of opinion on the opening balances. Maybe it could be that we go for a consultation with the PSAA when we have noted those issues, but I won't be able to comment over it until we have more clarification from NAO and government.
Thank you. Councillor Hymas snuck in a second question there. Craig Pattinson wanted to come in.
Yeah, excuse me, mine was the same question. So we've missed some years of statements. It'd be good to get a refresher of what is the sequence of completed financial statements we have, and how's that gap going to be treated?
Sorry, the voice was not clear.
I think the question, if I've got this right, Craig, was we've got those years missing, and what are we proposing to do about getting those pulled together?
Thank you again. In this case, I think it would be, what we are doing right now is just waiting for the consultation to occur. It would be very difficult for us to say, okay, this is what we want to do. This is the route that we want to take. Because the consultation would clarify what would be done about the old audits, whether they would be cleared off before we sign off on this year's audit, or whether we need to disclaim the opinion. Given that we haven't done any initial audit engagement procedures as per the requirements of ISA, it is very difficult for us to say what we have to do on those ones.
And I think Councillor White wanted to come in. I'm going to try and draw it to a close after that.
Yeah, it was just on the same issue, really. I'm still not quite clear what's happening with those 2 missing years of audits, whether the fact that they're missing impacts on the new auditor's position, ability to conduct a robust audit, and if it is going to make it more difficult, how that affects us. I don't know. It's just I'm not getting confidence. Are the previous auditors still, in theory, working on these previous 2 years' accounts, or are we waiting for the government to step in? Or it's not clear to me.
Yeah, thank you for the question. If I could just come in, I think as our KPMG colleagues have highlighted, we are waiting for that consultation that's underway by government at the moment. We were hoping for a response, I think certainly, probably over the whole of the last year in terms of what happens, because we're not the only authority that has got previous accounts that are not that haven't been audited. So we know that there is an issue right across the country. So that has been delayed. Partly, we were hoping it would come out before the election. We're waiting for further guidance. We are certainly, I know KPMG colleagues and certainly my networks, we are trying to ensure that we're keeping up to date with any conversations that are happening within the sector. But at the moment, we're just unsure around what the way that government will go in terms of what happens with those previous accounts. So we know that they did propose a backstop date of the 30th of September. That was what the consultation was underway, whereby essentially on previous audits you would draw a line at the 30th of September. What we don't know is the outcome of that consultation, of whether that will still stand, whether there is a new backstop date, what the implications will be in terms of accounts that haven't been audited. I think obviously it's been alluded to that Could be that they've got a disclaimer on because obviously the figures haven't been verified. It is very much all up in the air at the moment, and that does apply to both the pension fund accounts and the council accounts. So it is a bit of a waiting game at the moment, I would say, but I think both external audit colleagues and ourselves are really keeping our ears close to the ground to see what we can pick up. The only other thing that I would say is that I'm also in direct contact with BDO just to, there is still some work outstanding there, both on pension fund, council and value for money. So, we're keeping the communications going, but ultimately we are waiting for that further guidance from government.
Great, thank you very much. We'll now look to move to the recommendations set out at page 9, paragraph 3.1. This item is to be noted, and thank you to our colleagues from KPMG for coming in this evening, and apologies about the disruption and delays.
Thank you, everyone.
Moving on to item 9, which is Pensions Administration Strategy. This report provides the Pensions Committee and Board with a draft version of the Pension Fund's revised administration strategy, and the report is seeking approval from members. I'll ask Jamie Abbott, Pensions Manager, to introduce this, and then we'll go to questions from the committee as well. Thanks. Jamie.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening all. So as outlined, we're looking to approve the revised draft of the Pension Fund Administration Strategy, which is included in Appendix 1 of this report, following the consultation with scheme employers. So the Council has delegated the responsibility for exercising all its functions as a pension fund's administrative authority to the Pension Committee and Board. Bit of background and the outcome. So in accordance with Regulation 59, Section 4 of the 2013 LGPS regulations, an administrative authority must consult its scheme employers and such other persons as it considers appropriate when reviewing and making changes to its pensions administration strategy. So on the 14th of May 2024, we commenced the consultation with our employers, and it was open for 1 month. During the period, we invited comments from the scheme employers. The consultation concluded with no noteworthy comments from the scheme employers, and therefore the proposed revisions remain unchanged. So just to reiterate, the key changes we made to the administration strategy was around the KPIs. We aligned them with the CIPFA benchmarking KPIs. The rest of the strategy remains wholly unchanged. There's more just around making it more concise and easy to understand, so that both the administrative authority and scheme employers knew their roles within the administration of the fund. And section 6.9 table 1 shows the CIPFA benchmarking KPIs, which are now adhering to from the 1st of April 2024. So I'll put that open to any questions or comments.
Councillor Bevan and then Councillor Ingram.
Yeah, it refers to career average being quite complex and the importance of getting accurate returns from all the external members. Can you just remind us how many external companies are members of this scheme? And it refers later on about fining them if they don't send their stats in as appropriate. Have we actually had to fine any company yet?
Yeah, so we have, I think last time I checked, around 60 external employers we work with, and no, we haven't had to fine a employee yet.
Councillor Ingram.
Thank you. Sorry, I may have missed this, but during the consultation process, how many members participated in the consultation? Was there anything that came out of that? I know you said there was not. Was there anything of that stood out in the consultation?
No, not really. The main kind of feedback was just clarification around the changes, and that's it really. No comments or suggestions to amend it. They're happy with the draft.
Yes, I think just to add to that, so we sent it to all the employers within the scheme. So yeah, only one kind of got back asking for a summary of what the key changes were, which we did provide to them. So yes, I think largely to the point about fines as well, we don't really want to impose the fines. But especially given some legislation coming around McLeod, where we really do rely on employer records, I think this is something we can use to kind of get them to provide that data to us. So that's the intention. It's not to seek to punish them, but to run the scheme more effectively.
Councillor Hymas.
Yeah, we often talk about trying to engage members more in things like the self-service portal. And you mentioned that you produce an annual newsletter. I think it would be really good if members of the committee would also be sent that newsletter when it's ready each year.
Yeah, of course, we'll take that away, and when it's ready, we'll provide it to the committee and board.
Any further questions or queries for Jamie? No? Okay, in which case we'll move to the recommendations set out on page 37, paragraph 3.1. Can I see those in favour of approving this? And those against? And any abstentions? Not listening. Right, happy?
Yep.
Cool, thank you. Item 10 is the Pensions Administration update, and this report provides Pensions Committee and Board with updates regarding the pension fund's administration activities. This item is to be approved and noted, and it's for Jamie Abbott, again, Pensions Manager, to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so in this report, we'll be covering updates on the pension fund membership, the online member self-service portal update on the service level agreements, SLA statistics, and also approval of new emission agreements. So it's for the Pension Board Committee to note the information provided in section 6.1 to 6.8, and also to note and approve the emission of the entity listed in section 6.11 of this report as new employees participating in the Haringey Local Government Pension Scheme. So on to section 6.1. So have an update on the membership. The table 1 pension fund membership showed the membership numbers as at the 31st of March 2024, broken down by active members, pension members, and deferred members. As you can see, the membership numbers are wholly consistent. The main change being from the deferred members moving on to pensioner members, and this is due to a lot of data cleanse work we've been doing within the team, and we have to write out to members who are deferred pensioners to claim their pensions. In section 6.3 and 4, table 2 shows the member self-service portal update. Again, quite consistent, but slowly going up as we try to engage more members to access the member self-service portal, which allows them to take more control of their pension, run estimates. We hope that figure to go up slightly again once we do the annual benefit statements, which are due out next month. Section 6.5, table 3, member self-service access, shows the number of members who've accessed the member self-service portal within the last 7 days, 30 days, 2 months, and 3 months, and those number of members are cumulative total. So again, we can't affect that. That's as and when members choose to access the member self-service portal. I'll stop for any comments or questions.
Yeah, it's good to see that the proportion of registered active members using the portal is increasing over time. We did ask you this last time. Just a question for me. Do you have a target as to where you want to, what proportion of the members you want to be seen as actively using the portal, and then by what stage?
Good question. I don't think we have any hard and fast target, but I do believe that if it keeps improving, going up, that's kind of where we want to be. But we do like initiative, new starters get enrolled into the member self-service portal. So a lot more comms going out there to make members aware that it is there and to use it.
Yeah, so maybe just to add to that. So when we started this process, which I think Councillor Bevan had asked us to kind of start providing these numbers, we had 5%, I think, of the members signed up. And I think at the target between myself and Jamie, we said if we get this to 15, we'd have done quite a reasonable amount of work. So we're quite pleased to see that it's above and beyond. For me personally, I think this is a useful tool for all members. So we are trying as best as we can to make sure that all members have access to this and they know. It does take some pressure off the team as well. We don't have to run all the estimates. They can do that themselves. There's tools in there that they kind of shows them different ways of focusing their own benefits and making more informed decision about their retirement. So yeah, we'll keep on with Jamie and the team putting in the work to make sure that we can keep seeing that number going up. But we do feel like it's kind of starting to plateau a little bit. But yeah, we'll keep on working on it.
Any further questions, Councillor Bevan?
Yeah, on page 65, it's got the performance stats against the KPIs. Obviously, some of them you're not quite there yet. I know this is quite complex and pension staff are quite rare and difficult to recruit. So can you tell us how you're going to try and improve and meet these KPIs? And I know we've talked in the past about apprenticeships and all that type of thing. Are we making progress on that issue?
So I guess I'll talk to table 6.8 then address your question. So 6.8 table 4 shows the key performance indicators. So in terms of SLAs, I think good SLAs like above 90%, great ones above 95, and of course we want to be great at some point. We'll get there. So across the board, wholly we're looking good. But as you pointed out, it's the transfers which are the key issue at the moment. So last time we reported these stats to the PCB, those 4 statistics were around late 50s, early 60s. So we have seen an improvement already against those. We have got 2 new apprentices in who started early in the year, who have helped in the team with resources. So yeah, that's why we're seeing the numbers slowly go up. And we hope that will continue to increase as we kind of get through the transfer backlog, which we had at the start of the year.
Any further questions, comments from the committee? No? Okay, we'll move to the recommendation set out. Nope. Sorry, go on, Jim.
Sorry, and yeah, the last section, the approval of the new admission agreements. Yeah. So an admission agreement is a way that an external service provider to join a local government pension scheme. This usually happens when a service provider takes over a service that was previously provided by the council or a school, and therefore it requires to offer the LGPS to existing employees. The admission agreements to be entered into are closed, whereby only members employed at the time of transfer can remain within the Haringey Pension Fund. So table 5 lists the new admission agreements, detail the employers which we are looking to admit into the LGPS Haringey. And then, yeah, the recommendation to chair.
So we will now move to the recommendations set out at page 63, paragraphs 3.1 and 3.2. This is to note and approve. So can I see those in favour of approving? And those against? Any abstentions? Great. Moving on. Thank you. So item 11 is the Haringey Pension Fund Risk Register. This paper has been prepared to update the Pensions Committee and Board on the Pension Fund's Risk Register. I'm going to hand over to Jamie Abbott, Pensions Manager again, who's going to introduce this item for us.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you. The recommendation is to note and provide any comments on the fund risk register. Area of focus for review at this meeting will be the administrative risks. Bit of background. So the pension regulator, TPR, required that a pension committee and board establish and implement internal controls for the fund. The PCB approved a complete version of the risk register in September 2016. And since then, different areas of the risk register have been reviewed at each subsequent meeting. So the fund risk register covers several areas, including administration, governance, investment, accounting, funding, and legislative risks. And Appendix 1 of this paper provides the assessment of the administrative related risks that have been reviewed and updated for the PCB's feedback during the meeting. The risk scoring is based on the RAG system, red, amber, green, comparing potential impact to likelihood of identified risks. So I'll move on and talk a bit about the key identified risks in section 6.5, table 1, key risks. So ACC1, delay of publication of statement of accounts, which we covered in the audit bit at the beginning. So it remains a red risk. Harringay Council have published unaudited account for the past 3 years from 2021 up to 2022-23. The deadline to publish unaudited accounts was 31st May 2024, and a deadline of the 30th September 2024 for the completion of the audit. We have the external audit at KPMG, and the external audit is due to take place during July and August of 2024. So as we've kind of alluded to already, this is an issue and it's a national issue. And there's a lot of consultation happening at the moment to see how we deal with this. And we'll keep the Pension Board Committee updated with any new information we have. Key risk IMV 13, high inflation. So this has now moved from a previous red risk down to an amber risk. The current CPI inflation has now returned to the Bank of England target of 2%. And then IMV2, the increase in risk of a market downturn, has again moved from a red risk down to an amber risk. Current bank rate is at 5.25%, and inflation proving to remain more persistent than anticipated, and uncertainty still remains regarding the future path of interest rates. So again, officers will continue to monitor the situation as it develops and consult with our investment managers and advisors where necessary, and making the appropriate recommendation to PCB. I'll stop comments on the key risks before I move on to the administration risks.
Any comments or questions from the committee? Craig Pattinson?
I noticed that the risk rating for cyber is green, which is great. Can you just talk about that a bit more in terms of the cyber security for the pension fund and its administrators? Because I would have thought you must have been attacked or will be imminently. So can you just talk about that in the round, please?
Yeah, so I think I'll probably pick that one up. So I think we need to probably review that risk again. The reason why I would have included this the last time we assessed is we'd have had internal controls reports, and they usually give us a good level of assurance in terms of the security. We also have IT policies that are quite well developed within Harringay, where that kind of offers that additional protection. But given how much of a serious threat this is, I think it should probably be an amber as well. So I do take the point, and we'll review that again and provide an update to the committee.
Yeah, great.
I mean, does the pensions team rely on the same security protocols as the rest of the council? There's nothing specific in place for that.
No, so we share the same resources as the council. Our admin provider, the system itself is hosted by an external provider, and as part of the audit as well, they will pick up in terms of the internal controls of that particular system. So it's something that we do check every year. But I would not want to say that the risk is green. I think that's probably being too favorable. So we will review that again for sure.
I had one query, I suppose. I think we might have had a brief conversation previously about the possibility of including a column of change where the risk has been identified to change. Is that something that we will be doing, can do?
So we did start to explore that, but so apologies, my members. I think it was Councillor Tai who asked it last time. We are going to include it in the next risk register just to show the directional travel, especially on some of those kind of key risks as well that are changing. So not necessarily just the big update, but any of the key risks. So between myself and Jem, we just want to figure out the most effective way to make that presentable and to be easy for members to read and see, review.
And Councillor Hymas?
Sorry, I'm going to dredge up audits again. So I know that this consultation was going on, which had the idea of having a backstop in September. I can't quite make sense of what they mean. Are they saying that the auditors have to complete their audit by 30th of September for unaudited accounts for previous years? And did we respond to that consultation? And if so, how?
So if I come in briefly, although I might need to make an assumption about our response because it was before I started, so I might pass over to Tim. So essentially the consultation that was underway or is underway until we hear differently is setting that backstop date of the 30th of September. And what that means is that, so any previous year's accounts, so accounts up until 22-23, external auditors have to do their best possible opportunity to complete the audit of those historic accounts. Anything, so this was the proposal in the consultation, it's not been agreed yet, that's what we're waiting. And therefore, that backstop date meant that essentially any work on previous year's accounts would stop at that point. So if your accounts, if that work had been completed, then you would likely to get an audit opinion. If it hadn't been completed, then there would need to be a further conversation. And this is where there was a lot of outstanding questions about, is there a disclaimer on the account because they haven't finished their work? Is there comments in the external auditor's annual report? That is all the detail that we didn't know. And certainly with some of the questions that I was asking in the response that I submitted for my previous authority, what I can't do, and I don't know whether Tim can, we might need to come back with that, is I assume that we did submit a response here in Haringey. What I can't say to you at this stage is what that detail is. I'm not aware of it, but we can certainly come back. But that was the principle around a backstop date of the 30th of September. It was about drawing a line and allowing the external audit process to get back on track. And almost, there was probably a point where you were never going to completely clear the backlog, and therefore by putting that date in, you were drawing the line and having a fresh start for the external audit process. So that was the principle behind it. What we don't know, we've all responded. I assume Haringey did. Tim is nodding. We just haven't now had the government's response to the consultation responses that we all submitted. That's what we're waiting for. So yeah, we will come back. Like I say, we are all trying to keep our ear to the ground, and as soon as we know a bit more. So we want to resolve this, I think, as quickly as certainly the committee here and our external audit colleagues do. Thanks.
Did you have any chance?
No, I think Taryn just covered it all. We did agree, so we did respond to the consultation, broadly agreeing with what had been set out. I think the main issue of is the auditors have to also be confident with that. There's also some communications that have to happen between BDO and KPMG, just for them to agree on those statements. I think one of the things which maybe Taryn did touch on is some of these audits do go back quite a long time now, and to try and go back and sort of find everything about what happened in those accounts might not actually have that benefit, rather than taking away from the accounts we prepared for this year. So I think that's going to be one of the key things that might come from the next time we engage with KPMG, just in terms of how the consultation, hopefully by then, will be completed, how that actually impacts on their plan to do testing. From my sense, I think they'll just do more testing than they normally would, just to give themselves that additional assurance. And yeah, we'll be happy to support them with that as well.
Great, thank you. Are there any further questions on this item? No. In which case we'll move to the recommendations set out at page 69, paragraph 3.1. This report is just to be noted. Moving on to item 12. This is the Local Authority Pension Fund Forum update, and this paper provides an update on the Pension Fund Forum's engagement and voting activities on behalf of the fund. I'm going to hand over to Tim Mpofu, Head of Pensions again, and he will introduce this. We'll have some questions after.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, again, this is a standing item which members will be familiar with. Essentially just reports on the work of LAP, which we've mentioned already earlier in this meeting, in terms of the engagement they carry out on our behalf. We are obviously members of LAP, and as much as possible, like Councillor Bevan mentioned earlier, would encourage as many of you as possible to support the engagement in the work that they do in terms of trying to make improvement to social issues as well. So you will see that within this quarter, there was a lot of engagement that LAP did have with a lot of companies, primarily on human rights and social issues. Unfortunately, a lot of this correspondence was mainly in terms of like them setting letters, which, as I've explained before, that's usually the first stage of building up on any engagement. Once they get responses, they look to arrange meetings with the companies. and go then as far as setting some sort of recommendation at their AGM for them to either produce a report or to adopt better practices. So we'll keep a keen eye on that, and we'll be updating members on it. Just on the voting alerts, there was one that was received during the quarter from Apple. And essentially, there was quite a lot of resolutions in there, but much of them kind of centered around the executive compensation for some of the board members at Apple. I think you'll see that there was consistency between LAF and LGIM in terms of both opposed the resolution. But the wider shareholder base was largely in favor of that as well. I think we have talked about this report quite a lot in terms of the information that it produces to members. As we'll be having the discussion around the responsible investment policy, this might be an area that we might wish to reflect on in terms of making this report more aligned to what those targets and those beliefs will be. So just kind of putting that for members in terms of if there are any ideas, if things that you think would be helpful to be included, I would welcome those going forward as well.
Do the committee have any questions or queries or issues to raise on this one? No. Sorry.
Just in time.
No, just in time. We're not quite there. So on item 12, move to the recommendation set out page 81, 3.1. This report also to be noted. Moving on to item 13, Councillor White. This is the responsible investment policy development plan, in fact, to give it its correct title. This report presents the RI policy development plan for the pensions committee and board's consideration. I'm going to head over to Tim and Pofu again to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, responsible investment development plan. So as members will know, and it was obviously highlighted earlier this evening in the deputation, the committee, as part of its investment strategy review work, identified that RI was a key area of focus that we needed to build up on. And the committee requested that we appoint a specialist advisor to support with that work. So this is just to inform the committee, and you're all aware of this, that B Finance have been appointed to support on that work. Members of the committee have already had a session with B Finance, and the following outcomes have been identified at this stage. The first one is essentially this policy should be something that establishes what the investment beliefs are. It is obviously a very complicated area. There's different views in terms of how investment strategy can be implemented, and the idea is that the committee will be supported in getting a view on behalf of the fund. It will also produce a framework for members to be able to, for the fund to be able to approach ESG issues. So this is all across the board and in asset classes. And one of the key things that I think is important that's been highlighted is actually setting a framework for how the appointed investment managers are going to be held accountable based on that criteria as well. So those are our objectives. They're by no means statements. These are just the goals that the members have communicated that you're happy for us to progress in terms of that. The table in section 6.6 just outlines the higher level plan. So for those of you who attended the investment and governance working group, this was the plan that was presented. We did have a discussion on that plan. I noticed that it's obviously been about 2 or 3 weeks since we had that discussion. So we welcome more feedback if people have had any reflections in terms of the goals we've set out. Essentially, it does give us an ambitious goal to March 2025, which again, I state, is quite ambitious. But the idea for that is that we try and complete this work within this governance cycle before there's any elections or turnover in member. So we're able to basically run those workshops over the autumn into the winter. And by the last meeting, I think it's 20th March, I believe, but Cody might correct me later, that we're able to present a draft policy for members to approve on behalf of Haringey. So yeah, Chair, that's all I wanted to kind of put out there. It's just more for comment, for feedback from members. Any adjustments, that sort of stuff, welcome through.
Do members have any questions or queries? Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for jumping the gun before. So just a couple of things. First of all, I'm kind of mindful of what Keith was saying earlier about if we want to change our investments on the basis of some ethical judgment that we're making, then we need to have an investable option, basically, to put to move into. I think part of that probably has to be talking to other authorities that might have similar be making similar ethical judgments, and just thinking, you know, for instance, the deputation that came today, we're talking about Waltham Forest. Obviously, we don't know quite what Waltham Forest are planning to do, but maybe it would be a good idea for us to be talking to them and looking, because obviously, you know, any investments that we make are likely to be through the CIV. Waltham Forest would also be able, you know, if us, Waltham Forest, any other local authorities that want to be going in a similar direction to us, that we work together and we have those conversations. So that a kind of conversation outside of this committee with other authorities that sits in parallel to this process, I think would be useful. The other thing that I wanted to ask was, just in terms of communicating with people who are asking us to do things that obviously aren't as easy as they think they're going to be. Once we get to this point of having the responsible investment policy, if on the basis of that we decide to make some changes to our investments, what we're doing is we're talking to people about this, when is that likely to actually happen? Because it's all, you know, it's useful when having these conversations to be realistic about what actually might be able to change and how long that process is likely to take.
Yes, I'll come in first. I think obviously John wants to come in and probably invite Steve to come in as well. So I think at this stage, we're quite early into the process because we don't know what the output of that would be. And depending on how dramatically different it is to the current strategy, there will obviously be different times. It depends on the different vehicles. To your point around the London CIV, Waltham Forest and ourselves also sit on their sustainable working group. So we'll be working quite closely with the CIV in terms of any products they might have coming on. But I think the key is to get that clear understanding in terms of the message. And part of this process, as we've discussed previously, is wherever the RI policy is, it has to be investable. And that's where MERSA will come in terms of that support. Once we get to that stage, which I envision will be around the January, February time, MERSA can start kind of giving some ideas on how we can make that strategy investable, and they can produce some timeline. Hopefully I haven't spoken for Steve too much, but Steve, if you'd like to add on anything I've said there.
Yeah, Tim, totally agree with everything you said there. Just to add some color, though, given the discussion earlier, the most important issue in our consideration is just to be aware of the legal position as to whether or not you would be in a sound position to be able to make divestments based on ethical decisions. Now, actually, the previous government had proposed legislation that would prohibit this issue, but it did not get through Ascension. So there's a fair amount of uncertainty as to whether or not the new government will sort of pick that up. So that's a very important decision to consider. In terms of actual practical implementation, there are solutions to the issue that has been sort of raised previously. So it's not the case that it's impossible. It's a case of kind of understanding what those solutions look like, impact on return, risk, costs, both ongoing and transition, and then sort of taking it from there. So you can definitely look at this issue. Your main priority and responsibility is to sort of look at it in a sort of clear, audible, taking sort of independent sort of financial advice, and we can help with that.
Thank you. Did John?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what both Tim and Steve said. I mean, in terms of, and Councillor White has made a clear point about, you know, what others might be doing. I would suggest, particularly given that it's my perception, and I may be wrong, but If you see the statement the new Chancellor of the Exchequer has made, she's been rather clear that she expects certain things to happen, and if they don't, she might take some action. So that would suggest to me that if there are discussions with others, and I hear what Councillor White says, that those discussions might be done through the good offices of the London Civ, because I think if we start to go outside of the pool on something such as this, where, as Steve has rightly pointed out, we are in an uncertain territory, I think it could be quite difficult, and I think there would be more protection for everyone if any discussions, closely and clearly involved the London Civ. That's just my thought. I'd be interested to see what Stephen, Tim's, commented on that, but I would really be concerned if we went outside of the Civ at this point.
Sorry, Tim, did you have more to add to that, or we? No,
from understanding down.
Okay, Councillor Hymas, and then come back to.
Yeah, so just coming back to maybe Steve's point. So obviously the fund that has been particularly questioned, which I understand has investments, particularly in BAE Systems and Elbit Systems, is the MSCI Low Carbon Fund, which is obviously part of our equity investment, which makes up 40% of the investments that we have. Clearly, our strategy is to continue those equity investments. But I guess my question to you is, are there other equity investments where those kind of exclusions would exist? And if so, what would be the rough cost for moving from one equity fund to another?
Yeah. So just to sort of add, so we are aware that the Civ are looking at this issue, and they're potentially working on making some changes to an existing index tracking fund that might address some of these concerns in terms of disinvestment from armaments. Another potential solution is with Legal and General, who you already invest in, and passive assets with Legal and General are actually technically viewed as a form of pooling, because you get the benefit of LGPS fees, and in theory, the Civ are giving some insight, so oversight on what LGIM do as a manager. LGIM offer a vast array of different investment strategies, and we're aware that they do have an index tracking fund that provides a way of investing in a climate orientated way with some divestment policy applied, including armaments. Now, the cost of doing that is, you need to find out, we'd need to get information from Legal and General, but the cost of making equity changes at Legal and General is generally not that much.
Councillor Hymas again.
Yeah, so just to kind of come back to that, I mean, that sounds like it's something that could be within our overall power to do. I suppose my question also maybe to Patrick is, how does this fit legally? Because obviously we're saying that the priority here is divestment from armaments, rather than necessarily strictly fiduciary duty, perhaps. Although, of course, one could make a very strong argument that certain investments in companies that produce arms are not wise in terms of long-term investment. So I guess, would there be any legal concerns in terms of our responsibilities were we to think about moving that fund to a different equity investment?
The legislation is quite wide in terms of what should be in the investment strategy. It says you have to invest in a wide variety of stuff, but it doesn't actually prevent you from making a decision that maybe you want to invest in a specific kind of maybe companies that are dealing with specific matters that you are concerned about, but as long as there is within that strategy a wide area of investments within that portfolio, I think that should be okay. There was going to be legislation, like Steve mentioned, around boycotting and preventing boycotting of countries. That's it reached its second reading in the House of Lords and then obviously stopped because of the election. So as far as that's concerned, it's dead in the water, that legislation, unless, of course, the new government seeks to bring it back again.
I'm going to just bring Tim in, and I think Councillor Bevan had a question.
Yes, I'll just come in on that quickly. And I think just, again, maybe to bring it back to this item, this is why we've gone down this process of getting the actual RI policy, because in order for the committee to reach that decision to look at strategies, we need to have the understanding of what it is that the committee is seeking to achieve. So we are obviously setting out this plan to try and make sure that by the time we get to that point, it will be very clear. For example, we've had a deputation today, and that's been identified as one issue. Coming out from this work, there might be further issues that the committee might feel strongly about that it might want to also be addressed that are important to our members. So some of the workshops that have been detailed in here, such as one, the educational session, will touch on all the points you've made in terms of what we can and cannot do, how investable is it, etc. And then there's a point around the questionnaire as well, which, as we've identified, is going to be sent anonymously. The idea for that is just for members to be comfortable and for us to actually know what are the key priorities. So I suppose what I'm asking for members, just urging a bit of caution that we go through this process. We be patient. I know it's going to take, it is March does feel like a long time. The deputation did aggressive that this has been going for a long time, but this is a plan, and we've appointed an advisor to advise on that. And on the back of that advice, we'll be able to have any more actionable decisions in terms of the investments who can support us.
Can I just bring Councillor Bevan in quickly? And
yeah, just perhaps a little bit controversial. I'm merely concerned about that group we've employed, those 4 people that were at the first meeting, because they must be costing a lot of money to the pension fund. A lot of money. I'm just wondering, would it be possible to have the SIB do a presentation at one of these sessions about the policy that they're working on and what they're aiming to do? And also, could LGIM come along and explain about what Mercer's have just said about they've got some tracking indices that would meet what we're seeking? Because if those 2 people came and we thought, well, that's what we want, we could not have that great big bill, although we've probably signed the contract now with those people, but that's my concern.
thank you, Councillor Bevan. Councillor Hymas? Or did you want to come back on?
No, yeah, I can come on a couple of points. So I think this has been discussed quite a lot. So members did ask me to go and get professional advice to support on this work. We have now employed that advisor. We can invite the CIV, but the CIV do not offer proper advice at this stage. I know they're working on extending their offering. But essentially, this was asked from the committee, and we've set out a plan as such. And yeah, in terms of LGIM, we're happy to invite LGIM at the later session to show us about their offering. I think what's important especially for me as an officer, is to get a clear steer from the committee about what it is that you actually do care about. And I think that's what this process is designed to achieve.
Councillor Hymas?
Yeah, I think there are obviously ethical and moral concerns about some of the investments, but I'm wondering that given that some of the occupation of the West Bank has recently been declared illegal by the ICJ, and the fact that we have companies that are actively complicit in that occupation, does that put us at a legal issue? Is there a legal concern there that we are in fact inadvertently supporting the kind of breaking of international law? And obviously, relatedly, if we have stocks and shares in arms companies like Elbit, where the ICC has said that some of the actions that they have been complicit in have also been illegal, do we have a legal risk that arises from that as the pension committee?
Can I just bring us back to this item specifically, which is around responsible development plan going forward? Yeah, just to make sure that that is the focus of the questioning at this point. Thanks. Any further questions? No, Keith?
I sent the email about my concerns from the south of France. And some of the points I remember have been picked up by John and by Steve. I mean, I've been looking at doubtful about, seems to me a spurious industry growing up, trying to create more and more actually non-existent accuracy about the program. There's lots of ways you can implement most of the program by the various indices around. But there is no perfect solution. You cannot get it 100%, but you can go a long way in the process. And it seems to be quite expensive process. I'm also concerned, I'm sure Steve has looked at this as well, is a number of issues around ESG funds in America, where people have been having been a huge success from ESG funds, which they're outperforming the index, finding them underperforming, and people have been responding by changing the structure of it to increase the tracking error elsewhere in order to get it back to the index and keeping the money in those kind of funds. I don't see that kind of thing covered in the agenda. Anyway, I now will see these other meetings. If they're there, I'll have an opportunity to maybe raise another question or two.
Yes, so just picking up on your last point, I think you hit the nail on the head. So these workshops are designed to bring out and tease out those questions. So your B Finance will be at your disposal. I would encourage all of you to come with these same questions to them, and we can address them in those. I'm not trying to preempt what the outcome of this work will be, but I think if we have as broad engagement as possible, then that will give a good steer for us, and as well working closely with the advisor in terms of how we take the fund forward.
Do you have any further questions on the Responsible Investment Policy Development Plan? Anything else? No? Okay. We'll move to the recommendations. Set out page 85, 3.1. Is that correct? That is correct. This report is to be noted. Moving on to item 14 is forward plan. And this paper has been prepared to identify and agree upon the board priorities for the Pensions Committee and board over the upcoming months, as well as seek the PCB's input into future agendas. I'm going to hand over again to Tim, Head of Pensions, to introduce this.
Yes, thank you. So again, for members, this is the forward plan, and we invite your comments in terms of the activities that have been included. I think one we've just been discussing, which is included in the table in 6.4, is responsible investment. So we've just put that in there as in progress. One of the newer ones, which we might not have discussed, and maybe we might touch on this in the performance item, is on investment opportunities, particularly with regards to our private markets allocation. So that's one that we're already having discussions with Mercer. Might be something that we'll bring to a future agenda for this committee as well to consider that approach. So just inviting comments in terms of what's set out. If there are any items that are missing, we're happy to take kind of views on those as well.
Councillor Bevan?
The forward plan before used to have a monthly format with the agenda for all the monthly meetings throughout the year. So this is slightly different because, I mean, this doesn't include the date that you need to book the LGA event on local government pension scheme training. It used to be a monthly thing with the agenda and what needed to be done every month, like booking for that LGA course and things like that.
Yeah, so my apologies, I've only just picked it up as well. So we have prepared that. I think it's just missed from the agenda for some reason. So what I'll do is I'll share that with members tomorrow morning, and you can provide me your comments in writing. Just realized going through it that we don't have any of the appendices. As you can see, they're listed in the report. But yes, we'll be highlighting the dates for the next courses for LGA for any members who, even if you've done the training recently, you just want to refresh. I think we highly support that training. It's a pretty good one for members and making you more aware of your responsibilities. The other thing that we're just going to raise, which we might send an email again, which will come from Jamie, is around the training for members. So members might remember, I think it was maybe last year, or I think this time last year, we approved a training policy that sort of John had worked closely with us. We have noticed that we are not implementing that policy as we should. So we have a system, a software called Lola, where members can do self-directed training on there. So Jamie will be circulating information and details again and encouraging you to sign up and be able to take some of those courses. Some of the more topical stuff that we're discussing now, such as the responsible investment, will be included, but some of it will just around your responsibilities and engaging with members, that sort of stuff as well.
Great, thank you. Any further questions or queries on this item? No? In which case we'll move to the recommendations set out page 89, paragraphs 3.1 and 3.2. This report is to be noted. And moving on to item 15, pension fund quarterly investment performance update. I'm going to hand over to Tim and Pofu to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. So what I'll do for this item, I'll just introduce the public report. There is a more detailed performance update that MESA have prepared, which will be in the exempt part of the agenda. So I would ask that we maybe take the questions in the exempt part, but just for the public record, just to point out some of the key figures in there in terms of the investment performance for the fund. Assets now around 8.9 billion, representing an increase of 5.68%. We have made some changes to this report, as members will note. It is a working in progress. One of the key things that's missing probably from previous reports is the more detailed allocation of how each asset manager has performed. We are working on developing that, including some sector allocation information as well. The reason for that, which I'll probably get into the exempt part of the agenda, is primarily around, we've asked MESA to do this piece of work on the listed equities, or the listed assets within the portfolio, primarily because it's easier to get that information from asset managers in a quicker way, but also because we haven't fully considered what the plan is for the private markets mandate as well. So this is just a first attempt and to get kind of members' views on how they feel about that type of reporting as well. But yes, I am mindful that this is definitely a work in progress, and members have given me comments before around what they would like included. Just to assure you that I am working on that, and hopefully in September, we'll include that information in here as well.
Do committee members have any questions on this item? No. So we'll move to the recommendations set out at page 93, 3.1, and this report is to be noted. Moving on to item 16, new items of urgent business. Are there any items of urgent business? As there are none, we'll move on to the next item. Item 17 is dates for future meetings. You'll note in the papers that we've gone back in time. The actual dates are as follows. 30th of September 24, 2nd of December 24, 4th of February 25, and 20th of March 25. And item 18 is exclusion of the press and public. Items 19 to 22 are likely to be subject to a motion to exclude the press and public from the meeting as they contain exempt information as defined in section 100A of the Local Government Act 72. And yeah, I'm going to ask members of the public to leave. Yeah. If those online could leave as well. Just to reiterate, we're moving into items that are exempt from press and public. So asking those guests online if they wouldn't mind exiting the Teams. Many thanks.
Really?
Who's the host of it? They're all the. That's you.
Well done. Know how to go to IT issues in the future.
You should have thought it out at the beginning.